TripleKO.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Killer Instinct podcast. I am with one Maximilian Dood, one Mr. Justin Wong, and one Professor Layton GuileWinQuote. How are you today, sir?
Fantastic, because I'm here not only to talk about one of my favorite things on earth, obviously, fighting games, but horror as well. And how, even though they're two completely different genres, they've mishmashed together so often and so well, in my opinion.
Right, enough that we're able to make like a little list with Killer Instinct, of course, being there. We're like, we're gonna have to. We're talking about KI again, but you have to, because what do we have in Killer Instinct? We have
a wolf.
Werewolves,
saber wolf,
skeletons, vampires,
aliens,
yeah.
brave girl,
dinosaurs, ghosts, gargoyles, cyclopses, and I'm missing a couple more. Spider girls, of course.
In an alchemical
Mummies.
lab, yeah.
Yep.
And of course, corporations, the most horrible element of horror.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I'm sorry. Like, listen, I read the comments. I'm sorry that Killer Instinct just hits all these topics every single time we fire up the podcast. I'm sorry. It's just one of the best ones ever. But yeah, I mean, I feel like around this time frame, there's not many options for horror fighting games if we're going as deep cut as back as we possibly can. KI is like one of the first few, because if we were to consider something like, I don't know, Mortal Kombat, I don't think that's really horror. It's like violent. I don't think violence directly means horror, right? Like, I don't think there's much horror stuff in MK1 or 2.
Yeah, I don't think there is, but like there is fatalities for the gore, like you said. It's just very violent. But I mean, we all dressed up as Scorpion, Sub-Zero, and Raiden, growing up. So it's very. It fits the Halloween theme outside of the game, because everyone wants to dress up like these characters, especially Sub-Zero and Scorpion. But like, we could talk about later Mortal Kombat where it becomes kind of a horror fighting game.
Yeah, that's
but
way
before
down
that, it does. Yeah, but before that, it doesn't. It's just a violent game, and Killer Instinct really hits it because of the type of characters that they do have.
Did you guys ever see anyone dress up for Halloween as like Nitara or Draman or Movado or any PS2 era character? I don't remember seeing much. Did you, Justin?
Maybe a Bo Raicho, just because there might be just people on the streets.
You don't remember the Draman armies of the mid-2000s, right? That's just what they were.
To be fair, I'm joking, but then I just said Nitara, the vampire character from Mortal Kombat, that race gets zero play in modern Mortal Kombat almost.
She's the bat, right?
She's got bat wings and she sucks her blood.
She's the one that got washed in the movie.
Yeah, whenever she showed up in the movie, I was like, "Is this for me? Like, who's
She's
this
the one that got
character
washed, like right away. When the first fight she had, she just got washed.
I forgot about that. Oh my god!
When I saw her, I was like, "This is for me, not anybody else." I don't care.
Wow, I completely forgot about that.
But Drummond, it's a character I, for some reason, have a big like affinity to. He's just like a dried up like husk, a corpse. And he's got like this scary like voodoo mask on or something. He's got flies going around him. Like, that's basically taking the character Meat, which was just a skeleton with a bit of flesh on him, and turning him into a full-fledged character. And I was like, that's getting into the most gory character you could possibly have for Mortal Kombat up to that point. But for me, like, MK2 was kind of skirting the edge a little bit, where you're going to have stages in the Outworld, and there's like Baraka's race. They're kind of making it like a bit scarier in terms of the stages, a little bit darker. And then for MK3, it kind of gets a little goofy. You're back on Earth. MK4 is more or less more of the same. And it's only really until we've talked about before, but MKX and MK9 starting off with someone everyone knew was coming. They're like, Freddy in Mortal Kombat, man, it just makes sense. They've been theming this for a while, and of course, everyone was so hyped for that Nightmare on Elm Street remake. They really wanted to strike while that iron was hot, and of course, no one actually did. It was so disappointing because you didn't get real Robert Englund Freddy in that. You got the remake version, which is from the actor that played Rorschach in the Watchmen movie. Like that's who played Freddy in that remake. So they had his face, and it's kind of like, wow, you had like 15 years of this one actor consistently playing the character, and you don't get him for his fighting game debut, sadly.
Yeah, and it's like, if we're going back to where the roots in horror characters and fighting games, like, you know, like you said, Saberwolf, and certain characters that obviously evolved in later Killer Instincts, but I mean, Leighton, if I was to ask you, what is obviously like the number one horror themed fighting game that immediately sparks to your mind?
Oh, duh, of course. Vampire, Darkstalkers, of course.
I mean, it's like there's been a lot of
Wearing
takes here and there.
He's
wearing
he
the
came
shirt.
prepared.
He was ready.
He read the assignment today.
Yeah, and it's like Darkstalkers was obviously like the first big take, you know, and everything else around that time frame sort of stems from that, where there was other horror themed stuff that would start to sprout up after. And Darkstalkers is super interesting because it's like, it's this weird hybrid Japanese American like mix of some of the characters, right? And it's not like entirely Japanese, or it isn't entirely Universal monsters. They do something like weirdly in between.
So yeah, it's pretty cool because like the backstory, I forget which producer, Capcom, like some old Capcom producer had like a YouTube channel where he just told old Capcom stories, and he told the story behind like how Darkstalkers like came to be. And it's because Katsuya Akimoto, there you go. Katsuya Akimoto, he was a Capcom artist, and he was in San Diego for Comic-Con one year, and he just went because he was like a huge comic book fan. He's also the guy who kind of like told Capcom like, hey, like, here's why American comic books are cool. Mm-hmm. You know, so he was really instrumental to Marvel superheroes and everything.
I remember this story.
X-Men, Children of the Atom.
There was a dude at Capcom, that was like obsessed with American comic books, and if it wasn't for him, Capcom would have never signed on for any of the Marvel licenses at all. Yeah,
so he's actually the reason behind Darkstalkers too, because he went to Comic-Con and saw that, you know, monsters, Universal monsters and stuff are still popular. So he went back to Capcom and was like, hey, this is still really popular, and, you know, it's kind of like public domain. We don't have to pay anyone for a license. We can do Frankenstein and Dracula in a fighting game. And
it was also kind of like Capcom at that point didn't have their own horror franchise. Like Resident Evil was a couple of years off. So you look at Konami that had Castlevania, or Namco that had like Splatterhouse. And those were like since the, you know, the late 80s at least in terms of Splatterhouse. So it's like interesting that Capcom would, well, what are we good at? Obviously fighting games. So, and having that connection with like, hey, Universal monsters are still like popular. Like, you know, people still remember them, like, and all manner of them. And we talked about this a little bit in past episodes. I've mentioned it once or twice, but when you look at old Darkstalkers art books and you see the thousands of designs that are terrible for all the characters, because they're reiterating and reiterating, where it's like, they're even hard to describe, some of them. Like, what is a succubus, really? And it could be a number of things, but it's basically a demonic female that, like, sucks the souls out of people. What does that look like? And Morgan's designs are so awful.
Yeah, there's one that's like a bug, and it's like some weird stuff in there, yeah.
And even like John Talbane, like, he's got, like, bizarre designs that you're just like, that's just... The Darkstalkers cast is so iconic. It's so weird to see what you could have possibly gotten. I think there's like a few characters like, by the way, Anacharis or Anacharis?
Anacharis.
What? Anacharis.
Anacharis?
Anacharis.
I say Anacharis.
Because I was watching the Darkstalkers cartoon, because of course I did. I was watching it like a few days ago, and everyone goes Anacharis. And since they don't say their names in the game, like it's not like Anacharis wins or Anacharis, I always said Anacharis as a kid. I don't remember what it's like in the OVA anime, like the really good-looking one.
You know what it probably is? It's probably Anacharis. Because Anak, like, that sounds very like Egyptian, you know? And most likely it's like a mix between all of them that nobody's actually ever gotten right.
Probably right. He was the only character I remember offhand that had a couple of designs leading up to his final. I'm like, oh, that's a decent design for like a mummy character and stuff. So there was like maybe one or two characters that had stuff like that, but all the rest are just bizarre after bizarre after bizarre. And then it's like, oh, iconic. at the very end, and it's just amazing how we could have gotten a much different game. And I think that was a bit of Capcom USA going, yeah, you need to tone this design the fuck down. You need to do something else.
You were mentioning how the time frame of Darkstalkers is pretty weird, because I think this was, because this is 1994, this is a crazy year. I think this was like Capcom's second fighting game franchise. I don't know if Street Fighter Alpha 1 had already come out, because 1994 is crazy. Super Turbo comes out, X-Men Children of the Atom comes out, Darkstalkers comes out, Killer Instinct comes out on the opposite end, you know? Like all these franchises essentially are spawned anew, and you get the final version of Street Fighter in this year, so they're like we're ready to move on, you know? And I'm really curious, because like they're all developed like in tandem. So you get like Alpha and like all these other games, and Darkstalkers is technically the next new franchise next to, I guess, X-Men. And they probably are teetering on like 1 month, 2 month difference of being released.
Something like that.
No, yeah, Alpha came out a year after Darkstalkers.
So that was like 95.
So it is, yeah, so it is kind of weird to think like, I mean, Darkstalkers of course is iconic now, but like looking back at the time, it's like, oh, you guys went from Street Fighter to like a Monster Mash. Like, it's kind of random. When everyone wanted the next Street Fighter, you gave them
Alpha
this.
Or Street Fighter 3, you know? Like, that's what I mean is kind of fascinating. Like, what a polar jump. Like, even if you think of, like, X-Men Children of the Atom, it's like, hey, we're going from the most popular fighting game in the world to suddenly X-Men or crazy monster mashup. It's like, what the hell? Like, they are very, like, polar different things. And it's a bizarre timeline of just how Capcom was once again, like, firing on all cylinders with their arcade development end. And the shit was just pumping out like every 3 to 6 months.
And I think maybe in the same sort of documentaries about Darkstalkers or in the art books, I think the advances that the CPS2 could do with the amount of animation, that like we don't just have to have martial artists anymore. We could go a little bit crazier with designs, and like especially X-Men, obviously, because you know whenever we saw X-Men, we saw giant special moves happening. It's like, oh wow, we can probably do anything now. And I think a little bit had to have been because of the inherent violence in some Darkstalkers games, that has to have been a nudge, hey, Mortal Kombat's getting pretty popular. Can we get something in there for the kids? Yeah. Which is like, you know, Max, what do you describe it as? It's just like when someone gets chopped in half, they're just like a half cleaved bone or something. Yeah,
like
there's no real blood.
It's comical. Like it's done with a tongue-in-cheek style, almost in a similar way to like Samurai Showdown, where they can get away with it and they like have the body flash away. Like the different ways where you have devs that have to get creative with violence to sort of be able to still have it be an arcade game that's not going to like terrify the minds of children that will be pumping in 25 cents each time, you know? I looked it up, and no kidding, Darkstalkers is the game. X-Men didn't come out for 6 months after. So Darkstalkers was July, X-Men was like December of 1994. So if we're talking the chronological order of like, how did Capcom fighting games release in this year? No kidding, Capcom went from Street Fighter 2 all the way to Street Fighter Turbo to Darkstalkers. And that was actually their second full-fledged fighting game franchise is Darkstalkers. That's so weird.
It's a complete opposite when you think about it, just because it's like, well, the rivalry between Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, which one are you, which game are you playing, right? It's always, because I was the Capcom fanboy, and then you obviously have the Mortal Kombat like fanboys and everyone, because Chicago was like that place where like, okay, everyone in the Midwest loved Mortal Kombat games. So Capcom's like, well, we need to make something to maybe fight against Mortal Kombat, but just in our way, right? You have like Frankenstein, you have Victor, who's like supposed to be Frankenstein, but he uses his butt as like his attacks, right? So it's like
his squishy butt.
Yeah, squishy butt. Yeah, he swings it left and right. And you have like Morrigan, who has Darkness Illusion, Dimitri. You have a bunch of these really cool characters from the starting roster, and then obviously they started getting more creative with like other characters from Vampire Hunter and also from Darkstalkers 3 by adding more kind of like characters that they probably see from like movies or from like research or from folklore. So it was a really good, interesting transition from Capcom.
I would like to know what their thought process was like. Okay, vampire, strangely attractive fishman, mummy, zombie, and then they go, how about incredibly sexy Catwoman? You know, that horror trope.
We're like, just horny.
that Matt has several statues of, and we'll buy more statues in the future. And that is always, as great as she is, it's like, it's always kind of the odd one out, Felicia, where it's like,
Yeah,
Is it like the
is it an odd
is it
one
like
out,
the
though?
female version? Yeah, is it like the female version of like John Talbane kind of like it's like the polar opposite?
Yeah, it's like a sexy female cat girl. That's what I mean. Opposite to brutal dog kung fu man.
But there can be the sexy female werewolves. Why is it got to be a cat? Like it's just a weird.
Well,
it's almost like Bloody Roar.
Like,
well, what?
Let's be honest. Felicia is teetering on. Are you actually a cat girl? Is your whole body fuzzy, or is that just a costume? Like
she could be a cosplayer.
She's not 100% entered the furrydom. You know, we don't. There's questions to be asked here. So I got a question for you guys. Have you ever felt like someone is watching you? Specifically, you. So for any of you guys that are curious, yes, we have a special message because it is Halloween time. It feels like there could be eyes anywhere, and it's actually true. When you're browsing the internet, your ISP knows exactly what you're doing and when you're doing it, which is why we're here to tell you about one of the most important tools you can use on the internet, which is ExpressVPN. If you use the internet, which all of you do, it's the app that you need to be using. Since in the US, internet service providers are legally allowed to sell almost all of your browsing activity and information to advertisers. And it isn't just them. Things like network admins at your school, your workplace, your parents, whatever, they can see all of your information. And the whole experience of a VPN allows that to be privated. I think we have been talking about this in the past with Justin especially, where we'll go to events or we'll go to tournaments or things where we actually need to create content outside of the home, right? And you're on like unsecure hotel Wi-Fi. Has that happened to you a few times, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you go to the events, unfortunately, when you stay at a hotel, there's sometimes never an option to kind of like secure your Wi-Fi because it's like either open Wi-Fi, anyone could just join in. They could just be at the hotel lobby, is just like maybe try to hack to see who's on hotel Wi-Fi and stuff like that. But there's times where I had to use ExpressVPN to make sure the stuff that I am searching, I'm uploading and downloading, just don't get seen by other people at tournaments because it's kind of it's always a scary place because it can happen anywhere.
Yeah, and being secure in these public places with all of your personal information between passwords and everything going over the internet is definitely an issue. So using something like VPN allows you to 100% reroute through their encrypted server so no one can actually see anything. And it's extremely easy to use. You just open up the app, you tap this big button, and that's it. You're suddenly secure and your information is protected. So for anybody that wants to take advantage of this right now, stop letting everyone invade your privacy out in the open, and you can get 3 months of ExpressVPN for free when you go to expressvpn.com/TripleKO. That's expressvpn.com/TripleKO, expressvpn.com/TripleKO to learn more.
When I was reading the Udon Darkstalkers comics, they did do a whole bunch of like expanded lore with her. Like there's a race of cat women that are persecuted like the X-Men are, like mutants are rather, I should say. So there's people that are like, oh, we got to get rid of these incredibly sexy cat women.
Yeah, it's I think it's just a fetish and it's a fantasy for a lot of people just because in anime, when you watch like isekai, like reincarnated animes, there's always that one where people was like, are there like beast, like people that has tails and furs and stuff like that?
There you go, folks. It's the first time the word
Felicia
fetish has been used on TripleKO.
I think it might be, actually.
That's what I'm saying.
Won't be the last.
It's a very popular syndrome for a lot of people. So Felicia hit the ballpark because a lot of people love Felicia. It's either Felicia or Morgan. They're like I would say that the top two like most requested when it comes to the female characters. I don't like other characters are really cool. I love Shenko personally, but yeah I mean you can't deny
Shenko's
that
a bit later though.
Yeah, you can't deny from those Kotobukiya statues like Morgan and Felicia, they kill it.
That's what I was going to ask.
Every time.
That's what I was going to ask you, Leighton. Like, we're talking, because I think Shenko was Darkstalkers 2. That was
Night Warriors.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of, like, the original Darkstalkers cast. Which character do you think sticks out the most? Because, obviously, like, the later roster, Vampire Savior, it gets incredible. Of, like, the OG cast, which one do you think has, like, the most, which one resonates with you the most?
So, one of my favorite games of all time is Vampire Savior in the back. I love Vampire a lot. And whenever I started learning the game, Vampire Savior is a really hard game, and I didn't want to work too hard, but I didn't want to play a bad character. So I started playing Fish, or Rikyo or Albath,
Yep.
depending on English, Japanese, whatever. We just call him Fish because it's easy. I started playing him because I don't like to play footsies, and he can just ignore all of neutral. So even though he's not a design that I really care for, I've like grown attached to this character so much. So even if I'm playing the first Darkstalkers or Night Warrior or whatever, I'm always gonna pick Fish. Yeah. Just because.
Yeah, he's legacy now. Yeah.
I think he's the one who like he stands out the most to me because it's just like we got monsters and all this stuff. I mean, he's a fish person, but he's not bad. You know, he's not like an anti-hero or anything. He's just there. He's like, hey, I'm just trying to save my race of fish people.
It's an interesting spin on Creature from the Black Lagoon, which was obviously like what he was most likely going to be. But then, the Capcom USA team and Capcom Japan team are like, let's just not do the exact same thing. Let's do something
also
different.
make him hot. Make him a little hot.
Exactly.
But you could say that for pretty much every character. But I'm really glad you're here today, Lane, because it's like this is the first time I've heard of Street Fighter naming shortcuts to give a distinction for what character you're talking about. Because you're saying Fish, and I'm like,
is Talbane
what?
dog?
Who's Fish? Yeah, he's dog.
Wait,
And
really?
Yeah, because Talbane's
back to your-
or
what's
Talbane.
what's Raptor?
Bones?
So most people just call him Zabel, his Japanese name.
Yeah.
They don't call him like Zombie or something. I've seen Zombie thrown around. And to go back to Anakaris, even though his name is the same in English and Japanese, everyone just calls him Mummy. Because like no one wants to deal with it. Just like he plays Mummy. He's a Mummy main.
That's interesting.
I never do this. This is great.
Yeah, I know they did that for Street Fighter 2 for Claw and Boxer.
The only reason
but
they
I've
did
never
that
heard it for
was
Darkstalkers.
because you would get confusion between people that are like, yeah, who's Bison? Oh yeah, the boxer. No, the final boss. Like that's the only reason that those conversations exist.
But Lord Raptor and Zabel, I've never. It's very rare, but it happens where to me the Western name is like way better. Like Lord Raptor sounds like what a rock star zombie would be called. Versus I don't know what Zabel really means or if there's a meaning behind it. Do you know of any?
I don't actually.
Okay.
If you told me it's some like obscure like Queen song, some B-side Queen song, like that would track because like it seems like every Japanese dev at the time did that,
Somehow tracks back to Daisuke Ishiwatari in some way.
Yeah.
So,
But
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess what I wanted to lean into was, the fact that Darkstalkers is like a horror franchise that mixes like Western horror with Japanese horror. I think like what makes it so cool and timeless is that it's not in any way like edgy and it doesn't like take itself super seriously.
Yeah.
Like going back to like Lord Raptor, whenever he does his Dark Force, it plays like the intro jingle to Michael Jackson's Bad, whenever he does it and he like snaps his fingers and stuff like that. And just like a lot of the animations or, the fatalities, if you want to call them fatalities, like when Bishamon kills Fish, he like cuts him up into sashimi or something.
Oh, that's great.
Nice.
Stuff like that. So it's like teetering on the edge of like camp. And I think that's what horror is,
Yeah, it's funny. Like they're like Matt was saying, like almost cartoony in ways. Like if Animaniacs at the time was to have fatalities, this is what they would look like, And it's
something close to that.
And it's funny because at Further Games, which is interesting to talk about now, they get a bit more teetering on the edge of edgy because you start to get to Jeddah and stuff like that, which is obviously like, and I think the later Darkstalkers games, once you get to Vampire Hunter and you also get to Vampire, like actual the game everyone thinks about, which is Darkstalkers 3 technically. This is the opportunity where Capcom is like, okay, we're not going to take the usual, American movie tropes. They add Shenko, which is obviously like a Chinese ghost. They add just a JoJo guy in the form of Donovan that just poses and protects a little girl. And then it's obvious like, okay, now they're doing their own thing. And then in Darkstalkers 3, they get Jeddah, like relatively completely unique character. We're gonna take Little Red Riding Hood and turn into a fucking psychopath. But she's a little girl and she's cute. I love it. And then you get like iconic characters like QB and stuff like that, a hive mind that is actually working as one body. It's like, damn, dude, like they really get it. Like they're not even taken directly from movies anymore, maybe little bits and pieces of folklore and stuff like that. But I think the original character designs that they eventually start coming up with in later Darkstalkers games are so sick. Like they're even better than the originals in some ways.
Is there a trope, a horror like kind of character, like a cryptid, whatever, that's missing from the game? Or if they're gonna ever make a Darkstalkers sequel, what is there like a type of creature? It's like, oh, it'd be cool if you could get that in there.
I want Mothman.
Mothman, absolutely.
I want Mothman. That's all I want.
And you get his fucking huge ass in there too.
I mean, I hate to be the one to say it, but there's like an obvious, character archetype horror trope that is not in there that is pretty popular, and the Ringu character has already been done before, and it's in Killer Instinct.
Which one's that?
Yeah, Hisako.
Well, yeah, just
it's like Shanko's like the fun version of Hisako. Chinese ghost.
It's from Ringu, right? The Ring.
Yeah, Ring. Yeah,
like the Japanese version. Yeah.
The general like term would be like, I guess, like Japanese rage or like vengeance ghost, like one that's just pissed.
That's usually a little girl or something.
It's because the dichotomy, right?
Exactly.
Like it's like, oh, it's like kind of girl that keeps to herself, but then when she gets killed or whatever,
that's just Carrie. I just realized that's just Carrie.
A little bit, yeah. I was gonna say though, if I would say Jeddah is like the most edgy you get in Darkstalkers, right? And there's something fun about getting a really edgy character, like say a Japanese vengeance ghost, but it's hilarious for them to be in Darkstalkers.
Yeah,
like I like that playfulness, or they're stuck in this world. They can't be too edgy. They can't be doing anything, but they're like, like Felicia will be like, come on, let's go have some fun. And the vengeance ghost is like, like it's hilarious. Like it works so well in that way. So I wouldn't mind some like really edgy character, but I was going to say something like, I don't know, like Baba Yaga, like a Slavic, like European style, like mythological creature, something like that, like from that like part of the world. Like there could be something like that in there. If you look back at every Castlevania game, there probably is someone you could throw in there.
Does Darkstalkers have an alien?
Pyron.
Yes,
Pyron's technically an alien. He's like he's more of like an ethereal, other dimensional creature sort of thing, right?
In like the lore, I don't know. I tried to like make sure I had my Darkstalkers lore brushed up going into this. So I was like, okay, like let me read everything, all the synopsis. And it's like Makai is another world, but Makai is also the god of the world, and Pyron's an alien. And I was like, all right.
Yeah, so he's just an alien. Okay. I don't know if he was like some eldritch horror type shit.
Well, that's, you know what? That's one you could put right there. You could put like an old one god that's like been in Earth, like in a cave or like, I don't know, whatever. If I recall for Pyron, it's almost like a Galactus situation where he got, so this is going by like the Udon comics, so I don't know like how much, stuff they added, but he got so powerful, he just destroyed his own planet, and he's like, I'm going to destroy other planets. And in the Udon comic, it's like he sees Earth like millions of years ago. He's like, I'm going to destroy it when there's way more powerful shit on this Earth. So he waits like millions of years, then comes back, and then Darkstalkers have flourished. He's like, oh yeah, ooh, I'm eating tonight. And so the whole thing is based on him like trying to destroy the world, at least part of the games. But yeah, you're right. The Makai is like the demon realm, and that's also in there, and that was in the Udon comics as well. But you mentioned Vengeance Ghost before, Max, and it's like we've talked about her before. We've talked about her early on in our favorite fighting game characters, but like Hisako, and how Hisako leans into literal horror movie camera tricks and jump scares is still something that's like very rarely replicated. And that was Iron Galaxy absolutely nailing what they set out to do with that character. And like, there's no better representation of like a singular character, like especially one that's an OC, that's not like Freddy or Jason or Leatherface or something, where it's like, let's really go ham on this character and make her our own, but also lean into all these tropes.
Yeah,
like,
that if we're to like at the end of this, if we get an opportunity to like say what our favorite horror fighting game characters are, it's going to be very hard to like, okay, we can't say Hisako because she's just so too good. And everything I remember, even of like pre-development when they were first showing like all the very early concept of characters, I remember like looking through, I'm like, okay, Mummy Guy Broccoli Man. Okay, like looking at like all of these things, and then Hisako, and I would just go, what the fuck, go back. And he was like, really, that one hits you? I'm like, dude, you're like a Ringu character, that's so sick. Like, this is like an E3 where the lead producer's like, yo, check out season 2. And he's like showing it to me on his phone, and I'm like, hold the fuck on. So yeah, like I think immediately everything about, and nothing changed in her design, right? It was like every other character I think went through a big overhaul visually. She never changed. She was always perfect from inception to execution.
There was a secret character. I don't remember his name. In Darkstalkers, it's like kind of like the Omen of Darkstalkers, where he just like takes over your like the previous character's soul. You remember that character?
Yeah, and there's weird Dimitri and shit like that.
Yeah, D is like the weird Dimitri. I think that's when like Donovan and like Dimitri like fuse or something. But you're talking about, I forgot its name, but it's like
it's a possession.
It's like a puppet. It's like a puppet thing. It's like a weird like shadow creature.
Yeah, shadow creature. It reminded me of Omen from Killer Instinct, where it's kind of like a shadow possession type of thing, because pretty much you have like this giant like purple skull skeleton dude behind the character, and then it just takes. Yeah, it just pretty much takes the last character that you fought. So you just change characters over and over again.
So I'm assuming this isn't in like Vampire Savior. It's probably in one of the freaky.
It is.
Is it in one of the freaky versions, or like Vampire Savior 2?
It's in Vampire Savior. I think the character's name is Marionette, but it's like a weird code. It's
like a Red Venom code or some weird shit like that.
Yeah, like nothing that you would ever like. There's no like viability. There's nothing like, oh, like this is a better version or something. It's just like a weird thing.
Well, it's kind of around the time frame where they can just like fill the roster a little bit with crazy alternate colors between like, you know, Armored Spider-Man and D and stuff like that. We just changed the color of Dimitri and all of a sudden he's a different character, you know?
When you said Marionette earlier, like that made me think like, you know, it'd be cool in Darkstalkers that have an actual like automaton or a doll or like a toy that like creaks and cracks.
Like a Chucky?
Like it doesn't have to be like a buddy, like, you know, doll from a kid's store, but like, you know, like a Pinocchio almost type of thing, like a construct that has like, you know, you could lobby that Hootizle is kind of like that. I never know how to say Hootizle's name. Does Hootizle have a like? Is it just I play robot?
It's because another name is Phobos.
Yeah, the sad part about Vampire Savior is that Vampire Savior doesn't have the whole Darkstalkers roster.
It's true.
He's not in the first one, so he doesn't get brought up. But yeah, people just call him Phobos because I think it's another. Even though there's an English and Japanese name, it's a lot easier to just remember Phobos.
It is. It's
whatever.
It's a cool name.
If you're a Phobos Huitzel fan, I think I've watched D4Base's channel a bit, and he streams some. They literally stream Vampire Hunter, and goddamn, there's like godlike Phobos. that character will fuck you up in that game.
He's top tier. He's really top tier. Yeah.
What's up, everybody? Before, we interrupting you for the rest of this video and the rest of the podcast, we have to thank today's sponsor, Honey. If you guys don't know what Honey it already is, it's pretty much an app, a website that really saves you money when it comes to online shopping, right? It searches the internet for these amazing promo codes that you can save like hundreds, a few dollars, anything you want for like any type of product out there. I know as parents like myself and Max, we have to use this for kind of like a lot of things, right? For me personally, I use it for a lot for like kitchenware. I actually recently used it when I actually traveled to San Francisco to buy some stuff for our little one. We had to buy like a portable tub, right? And we saved a few bucks from Walmart using Honey, buying a portable tub. How about you, Max? Have you ever used Honey for kind of, Ripley and anyone else that you need to buy stuff for your family?
Yeah, if there's a moment in parenthood that immediately comes up is that you need to restock items frequently and as fast as possible. So using stuff like this has actually been great, where we need to like restock on, baby wipes and things that we somehow just absolutely go through a full box in a few weeks,
1,000 in a week.
Yeah. I mean, they do go by pretty fast, and stocking up is definitely very important. And besides stocking up, saving money is also very important. Honey finds a working coupon, and you can watch them prices drop. Honey also doesn't just work on desktop; it also works on your iPhone too. Just activate it on Safari on your phone, and you save it on the go. Right? If you don't already have Honey, you could be straight up missing out. And by getting it, you'll be doing yourself a solid and also supporting this show. Get honey for free at joinhoney.com/TKO. That's joinhoney.com/TKO.
So before we move on away from Darkstalkers, because we spent like 30 minutes talking about it, I can't help but get everyone's like general broad perspective on this. If Darkstalkers was made with modern day considerations, with an RE engine, right? Do we have like creepy cell phone killer? Do we have like Scream guy? Like how the hell does a modern day Darkstalkers work? Because like the only thing we know about the Darkstalkers roster literally comes from like the mid 90s for the most part.
Yeah.
So like how do you think that's even possible to create a Darkstalkers game that teeters on that Animaniacs level of like, I'm going to cut the fish man into sushi? Do you think that like works because of the time frame, or do you think there's like a possibility of doing like a super violent, sexy, Mortal Kombat-y kind of like Darkstalkers from Capcom nowadays?
I definitely think you could have like a slasher, like American
like a Jason,
slasher,
right?
Some sort of equivalent, like a human that maybe has like being possessed by something, but he just has like a knife or like a bladed weapon or whatever, because that is such a trope that Darkstalkers didn't have. But like now it's like so ingrained in horror culture of some type of character with like mythology, and you can even get crazier, like something like Candyman, where where it's like it's a human, but it has lore behind him, and like he's invincible or has
Krampus
powers
or
or whatever.
like that.
You could probably do a Medusa.
Yeah.
Oh, good one.
And I'm trying to think like, how does that game thematically work, right? Does it work in the same sort of tongue-in-cheek style as classic Darkstalkers? And I think this is one of the biggest reasons why there hasn't been a Darkstalkers game, because balancing that is tough. The last time we saw it was like a 1-to-1, right? Like Darkstalkers Are Not Dead was essentially like a 1-to-1 of that CG trailer, just old school Darkstalkers. Like Zabel comes out and spins the guitar, like it's like the same shit as the 90s. But I don't think you could just come out and do the same thing and have it be relatively like marketable for a big audience. I think you'd have to have some new funky weird spin, and I think that's one of the toughest things of the Darkstalkers franchise, is that a lot of the roster has essentially grown beyond the game that they're in, where the characters are essentially more popular than the individual games themselves.
It might be like a 2v2. I mean, you can't go wrong with a tag fighter, a 2v2 with some
I mean, like,
make it crazy.
I think my question is, do you make it big and bright and colorful and like really pretty like the old Darkstalkers, or is it something more along the lines of an MKX where it's dark and gritty?
Would absolutely hate a dark and
Of course
gritty.
you would, because the old one's great. Like, but I mean, that's the challenging part of like, from a modern day take, like, how do you adapt a horror fighting game with modern horror tropes, but then also be like cartoony, colorful, beautiful, but also, violent, sexy, and gross?
I think, and I know this is like basically a meme at this point, but I would say that Arxis could do something like this, where you can lobby that Guilty Gear mixes like edgy, try hard like characters, but like really beautiful, like colorful aesthetics. Like the metal, like the heavy metalness of Guilty Gear kind of plays, kind of plays into Darkstalkers a little bit, where it's, it's certainly got some like heavy stuff in there, but there's lots of characters that are like, a less heavy. And I think that kind of balance, because I do agree that even though I would like to see it like a dark, edgy, like American-ish Darkstalkers would be
your
funny.
Your Capcom USA cartoon thing is really kicking in there.
Well, no, because that's
hard,
silly and colorful. That thing is, but I think having like a cell shaded or whatever you want to call it to look like that, like I think you can make Darkstalkers look really gorgeous and invoke the old games while still having like a bit of edge to it. Just a smidge on certain characters and such. Like I don't want to see a brooding dark Felicia, because then that's not Felicia anymore.
You want like a DNF duel, but it's Darkstalkers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you mean. And that feels like, if we wanted to bring that to the modern day without losing its identity, that feels like what you would do. That would practically feel like it's a remake in many ways, like a relaunch.
What do you feel about that, Mr. WinQuote?
I'm on Team Future Club as my dream. If there had to be someone, the people that are working on Skullgirls now.
Right.
If there was any developer,
dude.
not just like
Good call.
not just aesthetically, but gameplay wise, because Vampire Savior, I feel like it's such an esoteric and weird and hard game where Capcom was literally just throwing everything at the table, you know, or at the wall. Like a game like that couldn't exist now.
Yeah.
Because it's weird. It's too weird. There's too many weird motions. There's too many weird mechanics.
It's technically like Capcom's fastest fighting game too.
For sure. Like it on paper, if you read some of the mechanics in this game, it doesn't make any sense. Like if you told me
like push block and shit, right?
Yeah. Like, oh, I have to hit 5 to 6 inputs in 2 to 3 frames just to push block.
You gotta slide your hand.
That's stupid, but it works in the context of the game somehow, and I don't think that could ever translate to a modern game. But if I feel like if someone had to make a new one that respected Vampire as the game and then Darkstalkers the franchise, I feel like they could.
This is almost why I would prefer it not to be like a big AAA RE Engine Street Fighter 6, like our next iteration. Yeah. This is why I would almost prefer it to be like a AA game. Make it $30-$40 and like get another outside dev to help you with it or something like that, like aiding or something like they did with DNF Duel, and just sort of create like don't try to reboot Darkstalkers and reinvent it. Just give us like Darkstalkers 4. You know, just like literally you can name it whatever the hell you want, but just keep all the stuff from the previous game so that your investment is still sound and the characters still look the way everyone remembers, and don't make it something that is like it needs to sell 2 to 4 million or else the entire company is sank, you know, like no.
Sorry, who's talking? Is that you, 2010 Capcom?
It's true.
I was right before we were recording, I was talking about Bloody Roar, as they do. And I would say that that's the exact same thing you do with a franchise. These types of franchises, you don't AAA RE Engine it or MK11 ish stuff. You want to like do like a $40, $50 maybe sort of like smaller scale thing. Because I don't think any Darkstalkers players like I need a big cinematic Darkstalkers story mode and like a big Chronicles of Dimitri. Like you don't. We're just. It's been a long time. Let's start off slowly and in a smaller scale because Lord knows it's not going to sell very well, unfortunately.
And that's the thing that Capcom has shown over the past not few years, it's actually been a long time now, that they are capable of these AA style games and they do relatively well. Like Ghosts and Goblins remake, the Mega Man 11 release. Like these games are obviously not huge, giant efforts, but they pull back enough and they're well executed, and they're very honorable to the originals, like Ghosts and Goblins almost too much, you know?
So good.
But yeah, like I feel like that's where Darkstalkers would fit perfectly.
It's a shame they wasted the name Darkstalkers Resurrection on the HD re-release because that's still what I would call it.
Yeah.
Because using the word resurrection, unlike every other time it's ever been used on a movie or a game where it's just lame, it just lets you know this is probably lame because it's using the word resurrection. Alien Resurrection, need I go on? But for Darkstalkers, I'm like, that makes thematic sense.
I think Resurrection's getting like some of the worst headway as like the worst surname ever next to Infinite. Like, oh no, just stay away from that word, please.
Halloween Resurrection.
So Matt, you got this list, right?
I got this list. Like this is basically the Darkstalkers podcast. I don't think people would mind, but because it's fresh in people's minds, and I know Mr. Layton is well versed in this, and Justin is a little bit too as well. Battle Monsters for the Sega Saturn. We're talking about Battle Monsters is relevant again now in 2022.
I'm gonna go grab my copy.
This is the weirdest week for the nichest fighting game in the entire world, where out of nowhere I just see Battle Monsters content everywhere.
I
open Twitter
on his thing.
Yes, and it's like what is going on?
It inspired Smash Brothers.
It's a platform fighting game, so obviously that's where Smash Bros. Came from.
Holy shit, he's right.
You know, I'm very positive towards fighting games on my channel, and for the longest, there's not a lot of fighting games that I think are just like, this game sucks, you know? But Battle Monsters was one of them. I remember playing it, I'm like, dude, this game is just terrible.
Yes.
Like, you can't do anything, nothing works. Sadly, probably, I've gone back and I'm like, you know what? This game's actually kind of cool. It has a lot of cool ideas.
Justin likes it.
And I had the exact same first impression where like Matt and Justin are like, no, it's kind of fun. I'm like, Dude, I remember playing this with my friends, like not even like a few years ago, and we could barely even fight each other. Like we would just run away. Somebody would get a life lead and just run the hell away. And like, how do you even catch them? This is bullshit.
Well, there is a juggle system where if you do hit them while they're changing platforms, they go into a juggle state and you could kind of launch them because every character has like a type of launch move. I played Death Mask, and Frank. I played Death Mask, and he's a grappler, but he has this like launcher boot kick that you could kind of just like juggle, and corner wise, like that's where touch of deaths really actually do happen. So, I mean, it has its charm. I do think that obviously it is a jank game, but they had a little magic in there.
And the characters are like the same thing where Japan said, well, let's look into some horror characters. So they do have a Medusa, they do have a Frankenstein. Wow, I don't even have a hard copy. Max is holding up a hard copy that looks like in pristine condition.
I love Saturn games. Look at that.
It's so funny because,
bro, damn.
Yeah.
It's super good because there's an uglier cover image that's used on the PlayStation version. It came out for the PlayStation. It wasn't just Sega Saturn, right?
I think it's only for Saturn. No, I think it's only.
Sorry, I'm thinking about Killing Zone, the sequel.
I didn't realize this was an Acclaim game.
No, yeah. So that's what I was gonna say. The weird thing about that game is that it's published by Acclaim in America. So like that box art is like the Malibu Mortal Kombat comic style, like edgy, like this is battle monsters, but the Japanese like is more true to itself, and it's like more like goofy looking, it's not trying to sell you something that it's not trying to sell you Mortal Kombat on the Saturn.
It's honest is what it is.
But
thank you for bringing up Malibu Mortal Kombat, by the way.
So this game is developed by Scarab, who I think myself and probably Matt have a fondness for because they made survival arts.
I love them, and I love survival arts.
And I would say like survival arts, it's not a horror game. It's a Mortal Kombat ripoff, but it has a very like palpable and like brooding atmosphere. I don't know if you've ever felt this, but like listening to Santana's theme in that game and just seeing like how desolate and how ugly and washed out the game is, it gives you a weird like, this is kind of apocalyptic. This is weird,
Exactly. It makes me think of Fist of the North Star or Mad Max. It has that type of like, this world sucks. and everyone that lives in it also kind of sucks. Like there's not that many heroes here. And like that, aside from the themes and the characters in Battle Monsters, it still has this weird atmos where you're just like, everything's kind of like uncomfortable. These characters are like a little too weird. Like these are characters Capcom probably rejected for Darkstalkers. Like this is too strange. We can't put this in the game.
But Death Mask is a cool name.
It is the coolest name.
He's like the Q of this game.
He's the grappler. Yeah, he's a grappler.
When people like gravitate towards Third Strike, whenever someone's new to the game, it's like, I want to play Q for whatever reason. It's like moths to a flame. And at a much smaller scale, whenever anyone boots up Battle Monsters, like Death Mask, this is my guy. He's cool. The name, he looks cool.
Yeah, everyone didn't look as like I went through the roster and say who looks cool. I feel like Death Mask was like that flagship character that you could really recognize because it's pretty much Frankenstein.
The skeleton guy looks cool too, but yeah, aside from those two, that's kind of like weird. It's like just samurai dude and like witch, like a fairy girl just wears green and stuff. What is the final boss? Is there a final boss?
Yeah, it's the Avatar.
It's like there's like 6 of them or something, right?
It's four of them for each element. Right? And the best part about it is that the background stage, it's literally every character in the game cheering for you. So you see like 50 Death Mask in the background, just like, yeah. And I'm like, bro, what? Like, it's just everyone just cheering for you. And it's 4 rounds. This boss level is 4 rounds. It's not 2 out of 3. So you have to win 4 straight in order for you to beat the game.
Damn. Okay. Killing Zone is like really, it's not a terrible game. It's clunky for sure, but like it sucks because it's so pared back in terms of its weird character designs over Battle Monsters. Like it's just simply rendered skeleton with like 1 sword, and their version of Death Mask is just named Frank, and he's like a bit lamer. Like all the characters are are like, this is our first 3D game, so we can't go nuts. And its presentation isn't as weird. But like, I was talking to Griffey Bones about this, and he was just like, yeah, no, the game's, I like the game. There's fun combos in this game, and you really need to look for them. But the game does play pretty well. I just get really sad how there was going to be like another character. I found this in an old preview when I did a video on this game, and even Justin got to say "beat you up" on it because that's the best opening round introduction ever. Just the announcer screaming "beat you up."
Beat you up.
It was, they were going to have another character, and there was going to be like more violence in the game, like dismemberments and stuff. And they just cut it out for whatever reason. It just didn't make it into the versions of the game. And I was like, if it was violent and you could put that on the back of the box, probably would have sold a few more copies to edgy teens. I know I would have bought it, for sure. So, what do we got next? Anyone want to shout one out?
We could talk about the game that we played a lot, Terradrone. Terradrone is an amazing game.
So in that Terradrome video, Justin, I think I actually say, man, GuileWinQuote should make a video on this game. And everyone's like, he did, you idiot, like a year ago. And I was like, oh shit, I missed this one. Tell us about your Terradrome feelings, sir.
I really appreciate this game because it's what every horror fan wants. Mm-hmm. They just want to see Freddy versus Jason versus Michael Myers versus Chucky versus Ghostface. They want to see everyone against everyone, and they did it, and it's really commendable because it's a very super small team. They made it in 2D Fighter Maker, which is,
I didn't know that.
It's not a Mugen game. It's in 2D Fighter Maker, which is probably like the biggest Western release on 2D Fighter Maker like ever. And yeah, super small team. I actually I had some back and forth with them when I was making the video, and they said that it took them like 7 years or so of like development. Okay. Because like it has that weird like pre-rendered style, and like if they started this in 2005, I couldn't imagine how difficult that must have been to like make your own CG characters, But I also appreciate it because, I mean, not only is it fun, but there's like some deep cuts in it too. You have like Maniac Cop, you have Tall Man from Phantasm. Mm-hmm. So it's not just like Freddy Krueger, you have like weirdos, only like really like schlocky, campy, like horror fans.
I remember the first time I fired up, I think the first character I picked was Ghostface, so like Scream guy. And that was kind of neat to see, Jason, a really classic horror franchise character, fighting what was at the time like a more modern take on what horror characters sort of were. Mm-hmm. And I think what the most commendable thing about this game, because we streamed it for the first time I think back in 2015 2014, right? And one of the devs was frequenting the channel, Acid Brad. I think he's one of the lead creators of it, and he's a mod on the channel now. He's been that way for like 8 years or so. And dude, he was just guiding us through all the things the characters can do, and how like Ghostface calls up other ghost faces on his phone, and they grab you and you transform into them. And it's like, the gameplay in this game is so sick, dude. Like the execution of concepts is like in a way like so honorable to the source material that I swear to God you get Leatherface and Jason, and the way they play is weirdly similar in Mortal Kombat X, where it feels like an MKX they just played Terradrome, and they're like, that works, we can do that works too. Like a lot of stuff carries over.
Also, Justin's assertion that Tall Man, who in his horror films Phantasm doesn't really actively attack people, he has like these silver balls. Like so who does Tall Man play like, Justin?
He's like Manat from Street Fighter.
How weird.
Yeah,
that's
because
good.
He literally just throws a ball, like pokes and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, the game really makes you feel like it reminds me of Mortal Kombat 9, like the combos and the juggle state and everything like that. It's very Mortal Kombat 9-ish, and I think that it's pretty. Like, it's pretty. We played online, me and Matt, from East Coast to West Coast, and like it's delay based, and there was no issues with it. It
better than every Namco game ever.
Yeah, it felt really good. It felt really good. We went through the cast and doing the supers and everything like that. And yeah, it was a blast to just press some buttons on it. Like, it was great.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like weird attention to detail too that you like wouldn't think about till you see it. Like, you know, Chucky is a character. Obviously, he's like a 1 foot tall doll. So like every character in the game has like unique animations of like they're gonna grab Chucky in a certain way.
Yeah.
Or like if Jason shoots a harpoon for one of his attacks, he aims down at Chucky.
He ducks it.
That I didn't know.
Yeah, he like ducks or whatever.
That's a huge attention to detail.
And just like how you said it plays like Mortal Kombat 9. So if this started in 2005, like obviously it's like progressing on like UMK3's like dial combo system. But yeah, it predates Mortal Kombat 9, but it plays like it.
Yeah,
you know,
it does.
you said that the characters play like the Mortal Kombat 10 character, Mortal Kombat X characters play like the Terradrome versions. It's like, yeah, this was a pretty like a progressive, ahead of its time like effort for like a 3-person team.
Yeah, and like I'd mentioned this before once briefly, how like originally they were going to have like cinematic finishers that were like big long animations, and they just couldn't like finish it in time, or they ran into some problems on the tech side. But I was just like, that's so ambitious. There's already like, you know, the trophy kills where you just pop an enemy's head off, and that's basically it. So they wanted, because I mean the game lends itself so well, like there has to be fatalities. Well, we got some in, and like they wanted to do these big Eternal Champions Cinekills from the Sega CD version and get them in there. I saw like a few rough like animatics or some rough animations. I was like, oh, these look cool. But fortunately, they're continuing the passion of this game with the version that's currently on Steam, which is like the 2.5D sequel, Terradrome, Reign of the Legends, which they're still making, but it's like they made some smart decisions with that cast as well. Like who's like royalty free where we can use them, but they're still kind of cool. So it's like Bloody Mary, and it's this like lady that's obsessed with blood, and she shoots mirror shards at you, and like a couple of others where I'm like, what's the clown one, Justin?
This.
I sometimes think it's Thing in my head. I'm like, no, there's already a bunch of horror things called The Thing. Yeah, so that game is still really fun. Like, it's still a little rough around the edges in certain respects, but they're still updating. They just put like their Dracula character in there. And I'm like really glad it exists, because all the work they put into Terradrome, but they can't sell it obviously due to all the licensing issues. I'm really glad they're persevering with the release on Steam.
Yeah, I booted it up today just because I bought it whenever it first dropped on Steam. I messed with it a little, whatever. But I booted it up again, and I was like, you know, this game is actually like, it looks good. Like, and it plays very well, you know? Like, you wouldn't, I mean, not to say anything bad about the team or anything, but for such a small team and such a niche game, I think you kind of go into like with expectations with fighting games. And I was sitting there and I was just like, yeah, let me pick, you know, speaking of modern characters, horror like tropes, they have a Slenderman type character, you know?
Yep.
And I was just like doing combos with him, and I'm like, hey, I'm like restanding and doing juggles, and it feels good and it looks good.
Yeah.
It's a cool game.
And that's the thing with like that perspective, you almost expect the game to feel like chunky. Like I think Seth Killian used the term crunchy, and it's like the perfect way to describe like jank fighting games. It's just like, yeah, things just don't work in the ways you expect, and they crunch in ways that you don't like. Like it's very true. And funny enough, between these dudes that have been working on this thing for Jesus like nearly 20 years now or so, it's clear that they picked up some tools of the trade of what made fighting games feel good and what is fun about them, and have interjected all of it into their essential fan-made game and now like officially released game.
Yeah, they definitely need to get. Speaking of Mothman got to be in there at some point. You already have a Sasquatch, so that's a cryptid right there. But Mothman, king of the cryptids, God, I'd love to see them in there. So like, I would tell anyone. I know people that are like super into Mothman. I'm like, Mothman's finally playable in a fighting game, you know. But yeah, speaking of Terradrome, there's another game that's very, very similar that released a couple of years back. I think like at least myself, Max, and Justin played like a really early version at like at an E3, not E3, at Evo probably, and which is Omen of Sorrow. which is very much the same thing where it takes like, legendary characters like Dracula and your Frankenstein, but they do put like an OC spin on them. Like Frankenstein is called Adam because he's like the first like of his kind, I guess. And then the werewolf is called Caleb. That werewolf is like skirting on the edge of Microsoft being like, hey, that werewolf is really similar to Saberwolf. I'm sorry, but like
shorts. Was it the shorts that give it away?
He's wearing shorts and like a belt, and the shorts are brown, but he's kind of blue. Like it's really close. And a lot of like kind of not, they don't really fall into any sort of category. There's like a Death Knight, like Arthas from like Warcraft, and there's like a demonic woman, and there's like a paladin and like a demon hunter type thing. So there's a lot of characters and there's a lot of mechanics in these, some that still I wake up in a cold sweat thinking about the doomed status effect, which I haven't played the game in like 2 or 3 years, but I'm like, what the hell was the doomed status effect? What did it do? And I still to this day don't know. Do you know anything about the doomed status effect, Leighton?
So sadly, Omnisauros, the game I have the least familiarity with, because they haven't released it on PC yet.
Yeah.
Yet. I played it once at an anime convention. Like
that's where it would be. Yeah.
It's funny. They have all these games, and of course I'm like, oh, Omnisauros, I've heard of this game. Like that's what I'm sitting down and wasting my convention time, like trying to like I'm in training mode. Like I don't want other people like sitting down trying to play with. I was like, hey, I want to figure this game out real quick. So that's what I did. But yeah, I looked up some matches and stuff, and it seems more, I don't want to say anime, but like more Marvel versus Capcom-ish with like, I have like, like Magic series and the launcher. Characters have like air movement and stuff. It looks cool. Yeah. I want to play it. And I'm going to get it when it comes out on PC, but...
It reminds me of more of like Power Rangers Battle for the Grid type of style, where it's like jump cancels and like these like air juggles. But yeah, the guy who made the game, he's from Chile, and he's a really big Marvel 3 combo heavy fan. Mm-hmm. So I just remember like that tad bit because he was showing me the game. I played it, and yeah, I mean, I was doing like anime combos pretty much. So it's a very combo heavy game. And then I don't remember the online, but I remember I played some of the devs, and they destroyed me because they clearly knew all the combos.
I find it funny that we're in the era now where people have now created, if not made, full fighting games that were Marvel 3 fans. Like Skullgirls was like Marvel 2 fans made a fighting game, and 10 years later, now Marvel 3 fans have made fighting games. It's like this game and like Power Rangers are just, this is Marvel versus Capcom. Even Dragon Ball to an extent, it's like, it's just Marvel 3 again. There you go.
Yeah, like that's a good point. And I remember when we were talking to one of the main devs at Evo, and he was saying like, I really enjoy combo heavy games. Like I think he cited Marvel and Guilty Gear a little bit as well. He's like, that's where some of our mechanics come from and stuff. When I booted it up not too long ago, there's like two things that kind of like just I can't get over is that the camera is very pulled back. And the characters are very small on the screen, like smaller than I'm used to.
Like
and
SNES Sam Show?
Kind of, yeah. And I don't know. I think it's not like, I get if it's a tag game, you need more real estate to show the characters jumping in, but there is no tag. So I don't know why it is, but it's just something that like bothers me on a visual level. Like I'm just like, I'd like to see these characters. There's all this empty negative space around that's not, nothing's ever happening on. And even though they have these really elaborate, nice, like level 3 supers, like a lot of them don't have a lot of impact because the sound effects are like they use standard sound effects for like punching and kicking on like they reuse that. Like, it's a smaller dev team and I get that, but like a big animation winds up and it's like, psh, and I'm like, oh, okay, that loses a little bit of like the excitement from getting the move to trigger and stuff. But I still, it's coming out with like a version on Steam. I think a PS5 version as well. It was on the PS4 for a long time. I think it even came to Switch. So they're getting it out there for sure. And I would like to see like, a turbo version of it, if, rehaul some things, or I'd love to see them make a sequel or all new fighting game, because they definitely have like passion and know-how for it. But there's just something about the game where I'm just like, I just can't come to grips with it. But, I love the idea. And this predates the Terradrome Reign of the Legends the royalty free like OC character one from like a year or two or something along those lines. And
I think it's weird. We saw Omen of Sorrow like a few years ago, like maybe 4 years ago now. I think it was either 2018.
Yeah, 2018 or 2017.
It's been a while.
It's a long time. I don't remember if it was 4 years ago or whatever, but it was during the Marvel 3 era. That's for sure, I think.
I think, and the weirdest thing is that there was, I think within the last year, another independently sort of made fighting game that was in like this dark brooding world that was also 1v1 and kind of looked like a Bloodborne fighting game in some way. Like it had those elements, and I swear to God I got like Omen and that game mixed up. I'm like, wait a minute, is that that game? I can't remember what that one was called.
God, I saw this today.
Yeah, it was not even like a year ago, and it thematically and visually like very similar kind of games, where once again they're horror games, right? But they're almost like interchangeable. It was like weird. Like, I feel like this didn't come out. Did it come out? No, this is a different game. Oh, okay.
Is this what we had like a few episodes ago? We were trying to remember this, and like I thought it was that Umbral Core. No,
that's definitely Core. Yes. Hold on a second. Umbral.
I think isn't Umbral Core like a mech game?
No, I know what you're talking about. It is Umbral Core. Yes. So if we can run footage of it, and there was a trailer for it like a little while ago, like in a very similar thematic fashion, right? Like, oh, they're doing something kind of, sort of similar to that previous fighting game we played.
Yeah, Umbral Core is what I was thinking of, and it's more like it says it's set in a world of dark high fantasy. So even though it has like a brooding like thing, it's like I don't think they're like leaning into horror per se, but like like dark fantasy and stuff. Speaking of which, where's my Warhammer 40K fighting game, man? They do everything but like the stuff that I want. Here's this slow-paced strategic RPG, and I know that's where the board, like the miniature board game comes from, but like I'd kill for a fighting game in the Warhammer universe. That'd be
you got Magic, the fighting game that came out a long time ago, so you good.
There was.
I would think it's a fighting game. It's on the original Xbox.
Oh yeah,
it's called Magic: The Battlegrounds.
What?
Oh, do I own this? I think I own that.
It's Magic: The Battlegrounds. It's online 1v1, and you use cards to fight, and you control a character. You got to hit each other.
Oh, okay.
And it's not Warhammer 40K, but you have your classic Warhammer fighting game, Dark Awake, Chaos Breaker. It's essentially classic Warhammer. I forgot what classic Warhammer is called now.
I think it's just called Warhammer.
Now it has like I have a friend who's just like in the Warhammer rabbit hole. But anyways.
Oh, okay. But yeah, like for Umbral Core, I was confused about which one that was, because I think it was just at this Evo Past where they kind of showed that off, and I think a couple of podcasts ago we were trying to remember the name of it. I think it's like it only has 2 characters right now. It's very much like a thing in dev right now, so probably be a little while before we see it. Mr. Layton, Castlevania Judgment.
Hell
go.
Yeah.
So
That's your game.
Is it now? Is this my game?
Yeah,
so,
it's associated with you forever.
Yeah, because I seen the game, but like I didn't. When you were explaining it on like Twitter, like, oh, this is a combo heavy game. There's like so much of this stuff. I'm like, wait, really? I thought it was just like a regular like nunchucks type of game, and that's it.
No, it's not. I played it back in 2013. It's good.
So that's what I thought for the longest time. I love Castlevania, and yeah, like I say in my most recent video, it came out and I just I don't know, I just didn't care about it. And anytime you ever see this game brought up, it's only about like the art direction.
Yes.
No one ever talks about like the mechanics or anything. So I didn't even realize, or I guess I forgot, this is an aiding game. Like it has to have nonsense in it, right? Like let me go back to it. And then like within the first 5 minutes, I was like, oh, you can infinite this, So I just started like digging around, and honestly, it's not like, it's not the deepest game in the world. It's not like, there's not too many mechanics. It's very simple, but I mean, you're not like playing Castlevania Judgment to go on main stage Evo. You're probably busting it out like, hey.
Though.
The game is like one step above like a Power Stone in many ways.
Yes, exactly. So it has mechanics, it has combos, it has goofy stuff, it has infinites and everything. It's just you have to think, because there's only one attack button in the game, so that's probably why everyone thinks like, okay, this game sucks, you know. But it's how you use this one attack button in conjunction with items and everything. It's like, oh wait, there's like cool tech in this game, you know, like there's like Oki in this game for whatever reason, and all this other stuff. So I don't know, I like it. It plays weird because it's like it was made for the Wiimote, you know, it's a one button game. They would just want you to like waggle and whatever. And then the GameCube controller for it, like jump is on the trigger and all this stuff. So
yeah, like no matter what no matter what control scheme you use, even though it officially supports like the classic controller and the GameCube one, it plays awkwardly like on them, unfortunately, right?
It's one of those games where like you try it and you're like, this sucks. Like just immediately, like your brain goes to this sucks. And then if you stick with it for like 30 to 60 minutes, you're like, okay, all right. It kind of sells you on it a little bit later because they do this interesting Castlevania shit where you get these like collectible items and stuff, like, you know, the pot on the
sub
ground,
weapons,
the cross, like, yeah, and these dramatically affect the way like your character sort of plays. So you have your character's unique weird gimmicks on top of that gimmick, and it sets up for like I remember having like a launcher thing with one of the whip characters, I don't know, and he would launch you up. I would grab a barrel that's interactable, throw it into them like mid-air, continue the juggle, spike them down, and go for Oki or some shit. I'm like, this game's actually kind of dope, dude. So, and it's all that aidingism.
It's
can we coin that aidingism?
It's a really brutal game too, because like you have to just eat stuff real hard. Like, I don't know, like whenever you get guard broke, you lose all your meter, and then you just have to eat like a giant combo, and it's like guarding is so scary in this game. And then you like offense is obviously like layered because you don't have unlimited like hearts for your sub weapons and stuff. So there's just a lot of things to like actually juggle when you think about it. So it's a very simple game with a little bit of sauce, enough sauce to make you think like, okay, this is fun to play for a night, you know?
Yeah,
exactly.
And you mentioned the art style before. When this game was like announced to come out, like back in these days, like 2008, I was like a major foot soldier in the Wii war of like me defending the Wii all the time. I'm like, oh no, shut up! The Wii's got like all these underrated gems. You don't know, I know. And when this was announced, I was like, oh, it looks sick. And I'm like, yeah, Death Note's the fucking shit. Oh yeah. And then when I actually played it, it's like, yeah, that first like 20 minutes, you're like, this is awful. Like this plays so like, I don't know what it is, but like it's just not hitting.
You know what's really bad about it though? The story mode.
Oh, absolutely!
It has this story mode that's insanely cringy. It's
to
terrible.
be fair, whenever it's a dream match, everyone jump in from other dimensions and time periods. It always sucks because
it's got that like latest Dissidia syndrome.
Yeah, like, but like I haven't played a good one of those where you know either Dissidia or like
MVCI.
MVCI or like not Dynasty Warriors specifically, but like the Tecmo All Stars Dynasty Warriors, where it's got Ryu Hayabusa and what was it just called? It was called like, you know, Muso Warriors All Stars or something. And like all those stories suck. Even Hyrule Warriors 1, where it's just like, hey, everyone hop in from different dimensions, let's go, and different time periods. Like there's always like a laziness about. There's a rift opening and blah blah blah. So I don't mind that too much. Shadow characters. It's the only way you're gonna get like Alucard, Simon, Trevor, like all these other characters in there at once.
You know, but this is the Castlevania fan in me. It doesn't have to be this way because Dracula has literally been killed by all of these dudes. He could have some really unique, like, oh my God, I remember you from 600 years ago. I'm going to kill you, you know? But it doesn't even like reach that surface level. You know, like the deepest it gets is like Shanoa talking to Simon and she's like, oh, the Belmonts are dead in my time. And Simon's like, I'm going to beat your ass now. You know, like it could have been so cool. Like, oh, hey, like, are we still killing Dracula type stuff? But everyone's just like, nah, we're going to fight.
Yeah, and it's just like the timekeeper character. Just the OC made for this game is just like, yeah, I just decided everyone should fight, I guess, like. But I could see like a really cool story coming out of it. Like Dracula's getting so powerful in this particular time period. I have to gather up all the warriors, everyone that can, and like try to stop him. Unless that is the story.
Hold on. I just remembered this is something that I found out after I made my video, and I'm like,
okay.
I'm beating myself up over it. So the main story is about this like Time Reaper who's going to like destroy the timelines or something stupid. But what's super interesting about it is that the person who summons the Time Reaper, and this isn't anywhere in the game, I think. I don't know if it's in the manual or whatever, but I got a comment about it, and then I read the wiki, and it collab or whatever. It said this was true. Apparently the main villain from Kid Dracula.
Shut up.
The Game Boy game is the one who like sets all of this emotion.
No way.
And when I found that out, I was like, this is amazing. Hold on, let me go back.
In case people at home are Justin or Max, this is like saying someone in Gem Fighter started Street Fighter 6.
Oh, that's good.
Why not? Why not?
So
like some events in Gem Fighter like established the lore of Street Fighter 6. That's crazy.
One of the gems became sentient.
So the story's amazing. I take it all back. Never mind.
Okay.
We got Kid Dracula representation.
I really doubt it. I think I said this in a tweet to you, Lane, that like I would love to see this game like formatted properly for like standard controllers or arcade sticks, and put classic costumes for all the characters, and maybe reduce like how long supers are, because super animations in that game, like not everyone, but a lot of them go on way too long. Like some of them are super sick, like 99 hits. Then like Simon Belmont jumps down and shows his muscular back, and he's like, "That's the power of a Belmont." And I'm like, "Oh, that's super sick!" But that's when the game came out, and now when I look at those super animations nowadays, I'm like, half of them gotta go.
So it's like a JoJo super.
Oh,
like a JoJo
yeah.
super.
And the worst,
forever.
the worst part is you're probably gonna get hit with it every round.
So it's like a dragon. So it's like a Dragon Ball syndrome. Then and they 3 Bardock all over again.
They don't scale, so it's like you get hit, and it's like, all right, well, I have to sit through 40 seconds just to find out if I have 1% health left.
It's like Mortal Kombat 11. Like we spent some times on these animations, man. All right, you're gonna
watch them, yeah. And some of them are really elaborate. I will say, even though the Death Note art style for the characters, it is very horror-y. You know what I mean? Like it did make Castlevania feel more like Insidious and like a bit darker. So in terms of like a horror fighting game, like it's even more like in line with that versus Castlevania, which is like kind of traditionally got like a brighter, more like anime art style, depending on the game, obviously. So when you see stages and they got these spikes and Iron Maidens everywhere and acid baths and stuff, it reminds me of like Mace the Dark Age and some of its like, fucking crazy stages with bodies strewn about and like, like wreckage everywhere. So it has like a nice atmosphere and stuff. And you, like you said in your video, this has some of the most incredible Castlevania music of like all time, right?
Mm. Yeah, that's if anyone ever says anything good about Castlevania Judgment, and I got so many comments, it's like, this game sucks, but I love bloody tears from this game. Like that's like 90% of the comments on my video.
Nice. We have to mention this before we wrap up today. The Black Heart for PC. I played this a little bit. I think I'm not sure if Justin and Max. I don't think you guys actually went hands on, but you've looked at footage and stuff.
Oh, I played it.
You did play. Okay, I couldn't remember now anymore. But
it's a similar syndrome of like very combo heavy game. With just kind of like interesting characters. Like I use Naroko, who's pretty much kind of the ring girl of the game. Even her super is like kind of like she's crying, and then you go up to her, and then it's like the game goes black and white, and then you just see like a silhouette of an actual woman crying, and then she opens up and she has like this like giant, like no face but just a centipede mouth, and just pretty much just eat you up pretty much.
And what's cool about it is that that's like, it's one of my favorite fatalities. That's like one of the fatalities of the game.
Yeah.
whenever the characters, so it has a very cartoony art style. This was originally a Mugen game. Well, they were a Mugen characters. Like, this guy was just releasing his own original characters, and until eventually he made enough where he's like, I'm just gonna make a game with all my original characters, you know? So it has a very cartoony art style, but whenever that character that Justin just mentioned does her fatality, she's crying and the character goes up to her, and then it just cuts to like a photo. It's like an actual like photo. It's photorealistic of like a girl crying, and then she like jump scares you, and that's like the fatality.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah.
It rules. It's one of my favorite fatalities like ever.
Yeah, it's good, and it's very combo heavy. Like, there's juggles. There is like a it's kind of like follows the Skullgirls rules, where after you use a certain button, the hit stun deteriorates. So for this one, it will just cause a knockdown. So if you use heavy punch 3 times, the third one will just knock you down instead of launches the opponent.
It's, if you've ever spent a lot of time with like Mugen, it obviously has a very like Mugen, like, okay, this is how launchers work. This is how like OTGs work and everything.
Yeah.
And yeah, just a really cool game. And it's actually technically the first, not Mugen, because Mugen, you can't license it. There's like another version of Mugen now called Eichmann Go. That's like what people use now, and you can actually like commercially use that. So technically the Black Heart, which released on Steam, is like the first commercial Mugen game.
I didn't know that. I know it got released on Steam like not even that long ago, but I didn't know that. That's a really cool thing about it. Yeah, because I played it a couple of years ago. I knew about it for a couple of years, like when it was initially released, and I just remember it's like I would see comments like every so often. It's like, you should play the Black Heart, the Black Heart, the Black Heart. And I was like, what is this? And then I finally see it. I was like, whoa, yeah. It reminds me of like, you know, it's art style. You said cartoony, but it reminds me of stuff like Salad Fingers.
Yeah.
Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. Like, it's got that type of feel.
It looks a lot like almost like a 2D representation of like Thrill Kill.
Yeah. Oh, well, now we're talking about Thrill Kill again.
like creepy horror Halloween fighting games of psychopaths fighting in hell type stuff. It sort of is like very similar not art style, but like character theming, you know?
Oh yeah, I think like the story of every character is like no one is like a good person, and everyone is like battling for some hell artifact or something. They're battling for the Black Heart. So it is very similar to Thrill Kill, where it's a bunch of dudes in hell.
Pretty much
fighting. Even though it's a 6-game cast, the game really does want you to beat the game with all 6 characters, because then you get to unlock the secret boss. Name is Janos, which I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how recently he was added. By just looking at the Steam page, it was like, we just added Janos, and everyone's like, oh my god, this character finally got into the game. So it's like people that are fans of the Black Heart knows who Janos is.
And
okay, cool.
I think it's a 1-person team too from Argentina. I think it is. I mean, because it started off as just one dude making these Mugen characters. So.
Oh yeah, that makes yeah.
Do we have time for one more, or should we finalize our number 1 pick for best horror themed fighting game character?
Do we have one more?
Is there another one on the list that we want to like hit, or is it the last one?
I think we got them all.
Oh man, every horror game ever made. I'm glad we got Umbra of Core in there, because I'm like, we haven't seen a lot on this, but that's like the latest one that technically exists, and I'm like, what the hell is it called? Like, I can't remember.
Like there's gonna be like there's gonna be like a monster.
Yeah.
There's gonna be like a monster or a beast added to that game at some point.
Oh, yeah.
You know there has to be. So
yeah. And then me and Matt was going back and forth about like which game is classified as horror, and I'm like, bro, you can't not. Clay Fighters, man, come on, bro, give it to me.
Why are you talking about Clay Fighters?
He's a pumpkin. He has a pumpkin head.
But that's one character.
Is Street Fighter a horror game because you got Blanca? He's a monster.
Yes.
That's done.
And we didn't even technically mention like what is the closest to the best execution of horror game bullshit, and that's technically Mortal Kombat X, which actually has horror game characters, like and practically is themed like a horror game throughout, like between visuals and everything like that. Like, and it's arguably like my favorite Mortal Kombat. So I got a deep attachment to almost everything in MKX.
Yeah,
but who's your favorite character though?
Number 1 horror character or just MKX character?
horror character.
All right,
Not Hisako.
We can't say Hisako. Hisako, she's just too much of an upper echelon, takes too much space. We talked about her too much. Go away. I'm gonna say BB Hood / Boletta. I love her. She's like perfect. Everything it does exactly what Darkstalker's characters are great at. Take one thing but also add something that's completely opposite on the other end. And that's weird, ugly, crazy Black Lagoon man. Also super sexy and a great dad, and it's like Little Red Riding Hood, innocent, pure girl to tell a heartful tale, actually is a psychopathic gun-wielding murderer of vampires and demons and is in it for the money, I love her. I think she's one of the greatest fighting game characters ever.
Yeah, I would say for me that obviously it's an easy choice. If it's not Hisako, it's Jason from Mortal Kombat X, just because man, just the way he attacks people, like they made such a simple character when you compare it to like Freddy and Predator, and they made him like such like so scary. Like he walks at you. First of all, he walks fast, right? So it's always he's walk fast. He has moves that get behind you, kind of like how he is in horror movies. And he has a mode where he just snaps his neck, and then the screen turns red, the music stops, and it's like, yeah, this is literally a horror moment, a horror X factor for Jason. So like Jason easily takes it for me.
Justin loves his Jason from MKX.
I do.
I really wish they got the Uber cyborg Jason. Like I wish they got that skin in there, not even a variation.
That would have been
awesome.
one of those I've seen.
Yeah. What about you, Lane?
I want to say, even though I love vampires, probably my favorite fighting game series, I want to say Zappa from Guilty Gear.
Great call.
Who's probably, speaking of like Ringu type characters, he's probably like the first Ringu with his Esco, the girl who's possessed him because she's like in love with him and everything. He like he's perfect. His design is just so cool. Like his animations and everything, you see that this guy's like tormented and everything, but it looks gross, but it just looks so cool at the same time. I love him.
Remember when he first showed up in like, I don't know if it was XX or something in the arcades for like the first time at my local arcade, and that was right around when Ringu had already been out for a long time in Japan, right? But The Ring just happened. And I'm like, is that the girl? Because The Ring was a big hit in the US. Is that the girl from The Ring? That's crazy. Like everyone would, big reactions of like, this guy's so weird. Like at that time, it's the perfect example of like a fighting game character, like taking advantage of like a modern trope and execute it in a way that's so bizarre and creepy and fucking gross. Like, yeah, I didn't even think of that guy. That's a great point.
I think for me, like if I can have a Sako, I really want her, but I'm not allowed. It's fine.
Sorry.
I think actually there's a character in KI that's like one or two monsters mixing together when I started thinking about it, and it's actually kind of Saberwolf. Like whenever I first saw Saberwolf in KI1 arcade, he had bats flying around him, right? Yeah. Wasn't in the Super Nintendo version. He also had literal blood, not dripping. Spit, but blood dripping from his mouth. And then as they like went on, it was like in KI2 Saberwolf, he got these weird enhancements from Ultratech. So then he started having like metal arms grafted onto him, and he was shooting electricity now. Yeah. And I get a bit of Frankenstein from that. And then even in KI 2013, like he went crazy ripping out all the implants, and he's just a guy that hates his transformation and like wants to get rid of it because he lives in a lonely castle by himself. And like if you're looking at an OC, like they made the most of like the basic werewolf trope, and like what else can we make happen to this guy, and what else can we do to like make him more interesting than just being like, a werewolf. And I think they kind of did. Like, it's weird that even though KI is not expressly horror, where they have like ninjas, secret agents, and like, aliens and robots and stuff, like for the horror-ish characters, they went pretty hard on pretty much everyone.
They practically
especially in KI 2013.
They practically Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde-ed Saberwolf in KI 2013, where it's just a guy trying to get back to his normalcy.
And his stage in 2013 is like the most horror universal thing ever, where it's like half a laboratory from like a Frankenstein movie. There's a dark castle in the background. There's all this shit. So
I feel like we for some reason don't mention Spinal too often.
To be fair, I was thinking of saying maybe Spinal.
Yeah.
But then I was thinking about Saberwolf a bit more because specifically when they showed Spinal's 2013 design, and it's like, I have Cthulhu's face as my shield. I curse you. I have like a kraken in my background and like, you know, cackling skeleton. Like Spinal came a long way in between basic KI1 Spinal. And there's a lot of skeletons in fighting games too. Like just going by Scarab's games themselves, like they have several skeletons. So it's Saberwolf for me, but Spinal was a close second, to be fair. So
I feel dishonored that I forgot about Spinal. Like I feel like it's a Ray Harryhausen character or something, so I'm not like even thinking about it. Well, there you go. That is every single horror anything ever crafted in fighting games. If we forgot about something, no one will ever mention it. It'll be unmentioned from this point forward. Leighton, where can everybody find the current stuff you're working on? If not your Twitter, anybody can get a hold of you.
So on Twitter and YouTube, I am just GuileWinQuote. I release a video on some wacky thing you probably thought about once 10 years ago and never again every month. So, yeah.
And like Dark Awake, because when I saw Dark Awake on your channel, I was like, I need to know more about this. And you very graciously helped me set up that game. And now it's like, I love that game. So through your channel, like, you know, sometimes I'm sure all four of us at some point go, I know all the fighting games. There's nothing I'm surprised about. I know. And then, you know, through other content creators or other people in the FGC, whatever, you'll learn about one and you'll come to like it a lot. And Dark Awake is one of those for me. So thank you, sir, for introducing me to that wonderfully wacky world.
Yep. It's a great game, and I'm looking forward to see that Tekken Game Boy card game that you were posting about.
I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, it was like it has juggles in a card-based fighting game. I'm like, wait, really? That's so cool.
It's a Tekken Wonder Swan game, and I'm sad to say I've put in like 6 hours into it, just trying to figure out like, man, like no one knows how this game is played. Like, let me figure it out. So
it's sick.
And thus concludes the first annual Halloween special of TKO. Thank you, everyone.
Tekken card game.
Thank you guys so much for having me. It means a lot to me. I've been watching all of you guys literally. Like Justin, I've been watching you from afar for like my entire life. Essentially,
we met at Evo. We
just hard dated.
It was
Justin
awesome to meet you. I'm just saying, like it was like so good. I'm just like, I see GuileWinQuote just recommended. I'm like, let me look at it, and I'm like, oh, I'm in here. Like I'm just on the bed. I'm watching the whole video. That type of thing. So it's been.
Oh,
really
I thought that was gonna go somewhere different.
Oh no! I'm just saying. You know, you gotta get comfy. You gotta get comfy to watch these videos.
Gotcha.
They're playing like Felicia versus Bishamon, and if Bishamon ends with a certain move, you just cut Felicia in half.
Did you make sure to see Orchid's thong? Here's 30 more chances as she spins around.
See, you've got the Batgirl shirt on, and you're wearing a Robin t-shirt.
Batgirl and Robin to your Batman.
And Turtles is like Star Wars in the like Star Wars is a 70s thing that ran into the 80s. Turtles started in the 80s but really grew in the 90s.